Hey, we're sitting down with Dr. David Klein again right here for the Resource Hour. And Dr. Klein, let's talk about hormone replacement. What about that?
The good, bad, and the ugly. Okay, what we're going to talk about here is very, very simple. Okay, what's good, what's bad, what to do, what not to do, what's real and what's Memorex, if you're old enough to remember the commercial, as some of you are. With regards to hormone replacement therapy, the word of the day, okay, is that, well, it seems to be safe, in spite of the fact that, 30 years ago, there are all kinds of articles out of the New York Times and elsewhere that suggested that it might not be because the individuals writing those articles didn't really go to college, which is probably the most highly qualified writers they have on their staffs, as it would be. But hormone replacement is the sort of thing you need to consider, and the reason is very, very simple. These hormones are chemicals that the body uses to communicate cell to cell. Now, it's not just something that you need as an option. It's not a bolt-on aftermarket second thought that you might have when you're building a house. This is not a builder upgrade. This is the sort of thing that everybody has from day one, and nature, as it turns out, starts to turn off the clock on you. It starts to make you exit stage left by starting to cut back on certain hormones. With women, it starts with estrogen. Okay, once they lose their fertility, they run out of eggs. Guess what? They're no longer really necessary on stage any longer. So this is the way nature starts to shorten their tenure. Now, that doesn't sound like such a great idea when it's in the first person singular. When it's you, that isn't such a great thing. Okay, so what do? You start to replace. And this is where it gets interesting, and this is where the different opinions come in. But the hormones aren't just one item. Well, what's included with hormone replacement? How about thyroid? How many different thyroid hormones are there? There's T4, T3, reverse T3, T2, and T1. Okay? Each one of these things has a different function. Hormone replacement doesn't exclude thyroid. What happens with gonadotropins? Okay, so let's say we're looking at testosterone replacement in men. If you ignore estrogen, estradiol, estriol, and estrone, you're not only doing half the job, but you might be doing damage. Forget about progesterone. It's important both in men and women. These are the sorts of things that are necessary with regards to hormone replacement. And then when you're done with that, you have to concern something called diurnal rhythm. These hormones, especially the gonadotropins, go up and down with time of day. And this is where the discussion is going to go with this. How do you select, A, whether you're a candidate for this, B, how do you get the dosages adjusted, and C, and most importantly, how do you have them administered? Now, with men, it's very, very interesting. Very obvious, okay, when their hormones shift around because they have visible changes. So between 3 and 6 in the morning, testosterone levels go up, as do men's libido and their function, let's say their ability to function intimately. Okay, men wake up with abilities that they may not have at 10 o'clock at night. This is because of the diurnal variation in testosterone. So what do? How do we administer testosterone? This is the divergence in medical care. Well, the cheapest way to do it is to give the guy a shot. Once a week, once every other week, twice a week. Let's give him a shot of testosterone. What does that mean? It means that the level goes up to 2, 3, maybe 4 times as high as it should be safely, lasts for 2 days, and then drops back down to 0 or back down to too little. The problem there, okay, is that, yeah, it's a glorious 2 or 3 days. The weightlifters love it. That's when they like to be able to pump that iron. But for the rest of the week, the estrogen levels climb. SHBG, it's another interesting little protein. It climbs and it binds up the existing testosterone, and they become harder and harder to treat. So intramuscular testosterone, while it's inexpensive, relatively, okay, it is probably the single worst way to do it, but it happens to be the most common way that most family docs administer it because they don't know any better. They didn't go to that class, if you get my drift. So what's the latest and greatest on this? And that's an insertion of pellets. They pop little testosterone pellets in men, estrogen, progesterone pellets in women, okay? And then you only have to have that every 3 to 4 months. Now, true enough, it's $500 or $600 or more, but you also lose that same diurnal rhythm. It goes in and you have a flat line level. Now, that's better than the intramuscular, but not by much, okay? So one, you're spending more money and things don't end up so well for other reasons. Third option is oral. You can give people oral testosterone, and it works somewhat, except with the damage that it does to the liver. Not the best thing in the world, because after all, 80% of what you eat hits the liver before it goes into the bloodstream. So the medications get torn up, they get metabolized, causing changes within the liver, some of them not so great, before you end up seeing what you need to see. So I'm not a big fan of oral progesterone. I'm not a big fan of oral estradiol. Now, I do on occasion have to use it, but only after I've exhausted other vehicles and routes. Which leaves us one more. And that one more is kind of interesting, and it's transdermal, through the skin. Now, why is this important? Because you can adjust for the diurnal rhythms. In other words, if the testosterone is supposed to go up between 3 and 6 in the morning, what do? You get up at 3 in the morning? Ideally, yeah. Okay, but practically, you're going to be up at 7. So if you miss it by an hour, that's not so terrible. You apply the stuff on the skin, you go through your day, and you're starting to emulate, you're starting to reproduce that which is important in nature. With women, you do the same thing, except that women are different. Honest to God, I've been, on this earth long enough to know that there are more differences than we can count. The French, vive la différence, good for the French, but in any event, they drive me crazy. But with women, it's not just a diurnal shift, but also monthly shifts. And you might say, well, I'm past that, I'm menopausal. Why do I have monthly shifts? Because you still do. You may not have bleeding down below, but you still shift on a monthly basis, which is why you basically go crazy twice a month. And that's okay. Men get used to this kind of thing. So how do we handle women? Wooden stake and a mallet is one way to do it, but transdermal HRT, hormone replacement therapy, is really what you want to be looking at. Why? Because you can adjust for the diurnal variation, but also the monthly variations. Interesting approach. Now, how do you know a good one from a bad one? Well, there's something called bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, which is something that I like to do because I think it's the only way to do it safely, okay, where you're using the same chemicals, the hormones that the body is looking for. These are not xenohormones or hormones that are not found in nature. You're looking for human testosterone, human progesterone, human estriol, estrone, and estradiol. Now, granted, you can't, grind people up to get it, so you do manufacture it. It has to be synthetic, but it's the real deal. Then what you do is you adjust based upon blood work. If you're not getting blood work and doing hormone replacement, it is a dangerous world indeed, because the symptoms of too much and too little are about the same with hormone replacement. Okay? So no, it's not done, blindly. Well, I have a hot flash, therefore I'm going to give you estradiol tablets. No. Last time I checked, this is 2018, going on 2019. We ought to start practicing medicine at least the way it should have been practiced in 2000. And that's by taking blood work, seeing where you are, and adjusting from there. The selection of the transdermal medication, the vehicle, is probably the most critical thing of all. The doctor that writes this prescription needs to be very, very specific with regards to what base is being used, because it's the tip of the arrow that determines where the arrow sticks, whether it passes through the target, sticks in the target, or bounces off the target. So when you go ahead and you get this done, the last person you want to be asking what base to use is the pharmacist. Last time I checked, they haven't treated a single person, not one of them, not ever, and they're not the right people to be asking this question. The doctor needs to know the chemistry because they're the ones that have to decide and determine where these medications go. If I give you a medication in a dermatological base, it goes into the skin, not through the skin. That's great if you want to blanch the skin up, lighten it up. Hydroquinone's great stuff if you want to get pale like Michael Jackson. However, if you want to get the stuff into the bloodstream, you'd better pick your medications and the bases very, very carefully. If you wanted to hit a nerve, you can do that by base selection. If you want to hit tenosynovium of a joint, you pick it a little bit differently. So the difference between good bioidentical hormone replacement and is the selection of the base and the follow-up with regards to the medication amounts as determined by periodic blood work. How often do you need to do that? In my humble opinion, which is not always all that humble, it should be every 90 days or thereabouts. It can be stretched out after a period of time once you realize an individual is on a steady, even keel or trajectory, as the case may be.
Hey, do you want to know more about Dr. Klein and the stages of life and directions on how to get there? Just 2 blocks off of I-4. Well, I tell you what, there's a website for that. There's a website for everything. It's called suffernomore.com, suffernomore.com, all one word, okay, and it's a .com. And there's a great nutraceutical program that you need to be enrolled in. The nutraceuticals come right to your home. Can't beat that. Plus, you get a discount. StagesOfLifeVitamins.com, StagesOfLifeVitamins.com. We'll talk to the doctor again tomorrow.